So, retro gaming horror, it's some scary shit, right? Haunted PS1 games, mysterious N64 conspiracy theories, yeah. Yeah, screw that, I say we go even further. Ooh, shit. CAIN is a quirky indie horror game I stumbled upon via itch.io a little while ago, created by Christopher Leno back in late 2020. I was looking specifically for spooky NES, Atari era type stuff that sorta captured the same idea as the typical haunted indie PS1 horror game, like the whole haunted retro game type trope when I came across this thing, but shit dude, finding a good example of that kind of romp is like looking for a booger in a haystack, highly unlikely and probably not as fun to consume as you were hoping. That's a concept I really want to see more of. Games taking advantage not of like PS1 horror or even something like what people are doing with the classic Sonic Genesis games these days, as cool as those two trends are, but experiences that rarely break open the limitations of second and third generation consoles and do a good job at weaving those with some kind of a ghostly premise. The indie game adaptation of the creepypasta adaptation of that NES Godzilla game is one of the closest examples of that idea I found that really strikes that balance, mixing a base NES game with some believable, or at the very least aesthetically matching glitches, corruptions, and a big scary demon shit, and damn that tickles me. And CAIN just so happens to be a short little indie along a similar vein, albeit with a bit of a twist. Now the game page does give off a bit of a corny aura, newspaper clippings about some fun massacres involving the company that made the game, and a lot of in-game screenshots showing off whatever cool spooky imagery the developer found under the couch, but what really interests me is the titular game acting as a diegetic piece of the scene. You're not just playing CAIN, you're controlling a character playing CAIN. It's part of the game's world, meaning all of that space, left, right, up, down, behind you, that's patented second twisted Schrodinger's prime piss yourself real estate. Oh, oxygen. Behind you, that's patented second twisted Schrodinger's prime piss yourself real estate. There might be a ghost there. And man, I definitely wouldn't mind finding more experiences featuring that trope. Horror games that utilize the idea of having you play some kind of an arcade or retro game essentially in second person just to have that one moment when they know to catch you totally off guard and shatter that built-up tension into a billion pieces. I love it. So if CAIN decides to innovate and do anything else, I'm pissed. No, I'm kidding. We're caning it up, baby. Let's download. So after the Unity splash, we open up to a bloody title screen. That's not a Britishism spilling out. That's a CRT with somebody's funky brain juice spilled over it. Fun. And Onion McGee, whom I only assume to be the titular CAIN, who also just so happens to be a dead ringer for this little dude from this one game I like, of which also has a character named CAIN. Yeah, if this is a coincidence, I don't consist of malleable tar. But I digress. Given that play button a tough knock in the cock drops us straight into lighting I wouldn't trust in a dark alley, with the room and by extension ourselves dimly painted only in the haze of a fizzled video signal from the game screen, already switched on right ahead of us. TKE Games? No way, it's those guys that died. Past that, in the second title screen of the night, we're introduced to somebody. It's never made clear who this is, only that they don't seem to recognize us off the bat, but are convinced, regardless, that we are their CAIN, I suppose in the context of a ghost, maybe, searching after their long-lost love or whatever, judging by the title screen illustration. Oh baby, after that spiel, it's gamer time, with our main objective to, assumedly, complete the in-universe CAIN, resembling some kind of an Atari, 1-bit, generic retro visual mishmash of a very rudimentary platformer, having you guide CAIN through a series of single long-screen stages that essentially act as a distraction to anything that could be happening just out of sight that you won't notice before it's too late. It's all pretty basic stuff, racing through some simple timing challenges, hopping towers, avoiding moving obstacles, that kind of deal. Occasionally, you'll run into fun words on a screen that will rattle off something to do with it being cold, dark, alone, and I never found any of this dialogue to be particularly unsettling. I really do think the general atmosphere was the driving force of my anxiety. Also, the dude totally barges their way in like it's a scary maze game or something, cutting gameplay off mid-stage with nothing worse than a few spooky drawings and the hum of TV static. Just nothing immersion shattering, I just thought it was funny to mention. Nitpicks aside, this is a promising setup, a funky little platform game in tow, probably a ghost too, wicked. Ends with the screen drenching the room in a cold, deep blue, dim enough that you won't be seeing more than a couple meters in front of you, but just visible enough to capture a glimpse of anything or anyone that might be a little too close for comfort. That's always a good sign of a quality indie horror. You're constantly checking all these objects in the room like, okay, I don't think anything's moved or that anything's shown up behind the window, I'm just trying to move the little guy from point A to be, cut me some slack. Things do get decently challenging in that regard too. While keeping it simple, CAIN does play with what it can, with such a basic moveset in mind. I assume designed this way to emanate the idea of it really being a very grounded retro platformer, you know? Before all of this shit. And while it is nothing groundbreaking, it's enough of a dopamine kick to keep me fiddling with while I enjoy the ambience of probably getting killed in the next 10 minutes. A part of me wishes these levels were more fleshed out though. It's tough to recall any detail in the level design, any of the stage mechanics, nothing. I do get the CAIN as an atmospheric horror experience first and foremost though. Hell, maybe a muddy collection of ideas and bite-sized stages was entirely intentional in giving the player just enough of a general stimulating distraction, while at the same time always having them at least subtly aware of the potential dangers within their immediate space, keeping tensions high. Oh, and the game does scare you sometimes, I promise it isn't all bullshit. It is the little things really, but the little things accumulate over time and by the end of the experience really started to psych me out, not to the point where it was overbearing or that I felt like things were getting too predictable. A weirdly neat accomplishment for only a 30-minute romp. But even only halfway into the thing, an ambience track starts to play, and it's nothing more than a deep thrumming tone, practically the same shit as in Slender the 8 goddamn pages. Yet here, with the suspense it had managed to build up in that short time, it was enough to have me panic and end up balancing the door with the game screen. Can't do shit if I'm multitasking, bitch! It's Ghost Rules, look it up. And it's like, that's cool, that's fun, whatever, right? The game starts to kick off a little more with some fun brick-crushed monsters and knives and eyeballs floating around. You know, the usual. Until you sit through another funky demon intermission and get back to the jumpin', only for a book to fall from the top shelf right after it's already established that the funky demon intermission was done, hello? Then how could any of this get any worse except for a single sound cue letting me know that, hello, don't mind me, just an open gate to potentially your worst nightmare. You know, next there's a pair of glowing eyes that shuffle ever closer before just trailing off. It's like, okay. Like kids, kinda, but my gosh, these elements freaked me out, and not any one really scared me. It's more that every bloody time something like this would happen, it'd just push that paranoia more and more into me, constructing this expectation of something beyond creepy to thrust out at me and kill me dead, so obviously this game would never screw the pooch and make the ending a bit shit. What, the ghost? There were like a billion ways you could have done that. You could have had there be like no jump scare till you looked at a certain dark corner, or had something audibly shuffle around a bit at the highest point of tension and catch the player totally off guard seconds later with a well-timed spook. I don't know, something. I don't know, an underwhelming, poorly executed jump scare that played out somehow even more predictably than I hoped it wouldn't ain't the be-all end-all for an otherwise solid, spooky experience. The dramatic tension all the way through was stellar for an indie title this short, but it's like, man. But it's fine, I'm not gonna let that sour my sausages. This was a valuable learning experience for me, in that dead women are highly irrational. CAIN is a brief slice of some fantastic independent interactive horror, constructing an effective, creepy scenario with an element I don't see much of, but clearly has some huge potential, with examples like Duck Season showing off just how far you can go with a concept like that. That nostalgic childhood memory of sitting in front of a TV late at night with only the fuzz of the game screen illuminating the vicinity is one you can draw a lot of scary material from. It's easy to get cornered in a dark environment like that, especially when you're distracted. Diegetic horror, now that's what I want to see more of, baby. Fuck PS1 horror and Sonic.exe fan games. I am not impressed with shit unless your game's occurring within the context of the scene. Then, and only then, is that how I know something horrendous is about to happen to your protagonist. Yeah, I'm not shitting myself yet. Thank you.